All right, let's get started.
Good.
Andrew, okay. So hello everyone and welcome to the English Language Fellow Program, Stories from the Field. Today we're going to hear from three incredible alumni who are excited of their journey with you. Before we begin, I'd like to know who we have with us here. If you don't mind, can you share in the chat where you are teaching or where you work now, and if you've ever heard of the fellow program or done the fellow program? And you can choose from these options. I've never heard of the fellow program. I know a little bit about the fellow program. I plan to apply, or I'm an alum of the program. So if you can type in the chat box where you're working now and if you've ever heard of the fellow program. And I will type myself. My name's Jenny, and I work at the State Department, and I'm an alum of the program. Alfredo, one of our fantastic storytellers, is an alum and wants to do it again. Me too. Welcome, Catherine. You've never heard of the program and you're a grad student. Perfect. And Laura is starting her virtual fellow assignment next week. Amazing. Welcome to both of you. Okay. Well, I'll just talk a little bit about the program before we hear from our storytellers, just to make sure that everyone knows a little bit about the program. So the English Language Fellow Program started in 1969. So just last year, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. Over the course of the program's history, nearly 1,500 TESOL professionals have participated in the program. It's a 10-month paid teaching fellowship where we send U.S. TESOL professionals abroad in normal times. Fellow projects are designed by U.S. embassies worldwide, and each project is very different, and they vary based on the needs of each country. All projects are designed to develop English language teaching capacity, and almost all projects involve some degree of teacher training as well as cultural exchange. The program goals. So the fellow program is funded by the Office of English Language Programs, which is within the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So in addition to teaching English, fellows support public diplomacy abroad with 50,000 other State Department exchange participants every year. So we're just about to begin our storytelling, but I'm excited to introduce our three alumni who are also all currently Californians. Speaking of which, do any of you know which state has the most fellow alumni? Any guesses?
Is it on the West Coast?
It is on the West Coast. And if you're thinking it's California, you are right. California has the most alumni of the program. So if you're from California and you're considering applying, you should definitely do it to keep your spot as #1 fellow alumni state. Please also share with anyone you know, friends or colleagues who might be interested. All right. Alfredo Gauona is our first storyteller today. Alfredo is an English language fellow in Indonesia from 2015 to 2016, and he's a doctoral candidate at the University of California, Merced. Alfredo has 5 teaching licenses and is also a credentialed administrator. He's currently pursuing research interests in identity, resilience, migration, transnationalism, and rurality in his doctoral program. So I'm so excited to hear Alfredo's story today, Misadventure in Indonesia.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and this is perfect for this conference with the theme of resiliency. So let me tell you my story. So when my wife and I arrived in Indonesia, we realized we had a bit of celebrity status as North American outsiders. I was shocked by the amount of selfies I took with people that first week. My wife would laugh at me, telling me it's gone to my head, a fleeting moment of pride before the fall. At the end of our first week, after coming back from the supermarket, my wife asked to drive the scooter. Now she loves adrenaline. I asked her to start slow. So we had once rented four-wheelers in Mexico, and I'll be honest, she terrorized me with how fast she drove. But we were dating, so I acted nonchalant about it. So it made sense that I asked her to start slow. So I get in the back, take on the backpack full of groceries, my two arms holding on to a couple bags each as I kind of sort of lean into her. We are doing well. She feels a bit more confident and she picks up a good amount of speed as she's cruising down our neighborhood road. Then, as we are whizzing by, approaching an oncoming right turn. Mind you, she had a good deal of experience on four wheelers before this moment, proceeds to ask me at the height of our speed and nearing our turn how to slow down. Or if you can see the look on my face as I went flying over her shoulder as we crashed. Groceries thrown about, us several feet from one another, my prized jalapenos, boxes of cereal, all the food was scattered on an otherwise picturesque rice paddy field. After a brief "are we okay" moment, we laughed hard at ourselves, at the sight, all in front of our neighbors. That included the wonderful lady that did our laundry, the man who took out our trash, and the couple who fed us daily. All the businesses that operated out of home bore witness to our shame, and the minor celebrity status that we held assured that everyone would know what the silly foreigners had done. So, a couple days later, still new to the neighborhood, we take a stroll around town. Now, I should mention that I have always had a fear of lizards, reptiles in general, alligators in particular. Well, Indonesia has a huge monitor lizard, harmless reptiles several feet long, but in my defense, I didn't know this at the time. So, as we approach this bridge, we stop to linger and see the river. Well, that's when I spotted a large tail whipping in the water attached to what I thought was an alligator. I bolted. Instinct kicked in, fight or flight, I flew. Now, my wife says by the time she realized what she saw and turned to ask me to confirm, I was down the street. I say I didn't run away. I made sure the path was safe and clear ahead of us. I wasn't being a coward, but in fact, a hero. My wife disagrees, of course. And worse yet, all this spectacle was witnessed by our neighborhood store. During the first 2 months, I leaned on my colleagues Ridwan and Uday a lot. Ridwan was a graduate student who taught my wife English, and Uday helped us buy our furniture, and he was my boss as well. Well, one night, my wife was waking up with pain and couldn't figure out what it was. Her lower back and front was hurting. I asked her if she wanted to go to the doctor. She said she'd sleep through it. Well, this pain came and went for a couple days. And one night, it was just too much. I called Uday and I said, he sent Ridwan to my house and we went to three different hospitals. Ridwan served as our translator as we got x-rays, blood samples, everything. By the time we reached the third hospital, my wife appendicitis was treatment. As soon as the doctor saw her, he rushed her into immediate surgery. I paced outside the waiting room, nervous. I couldn't ask people if how my wife was doing or if for any sort of kind of update because of the language issue. I really felt helpless and scared, to be honest. And not that I would show that to my wife, who already thought I was a coward after the lizard incident. But when my wife woke up after surgery, a profound sense of relief washed over me. I took the picture that unfortunately I don't have to share with you as a reminder to myself that she was okay. And over the next several weeks, as she recovered, everyone pitched in. A wonderful married couple named Iwan and his wife picked in on my wife daily to make sure that she didn't need anything. And by the time it came to sell our stuff, our scooter, it was really bittersweet. It meant that we had to go away. No more nasi goreng at our favorite locale. We said goodbye to Ridwan and Urai, to our Indonesian hosts who through pantomime, broken Indonesian, and a reciprocal sense of respect, we got to know each other pretty well. Before we left, Urai organized a going away party with faculty and friends and family. We sat, we ate, and we talked, and as we said our goodbyes. My wife and I joke that our shared experience in Indonesia makes us power outages, limited internet, and daily thunderstorms to learn to appreciate life for what it is, the moments with each other, friends, colleagues, and community. We make fool of ourselves many times in Indonesia and in the process of adapting to the country. And they were gracious enough not to record us and blast us on social media for likes. For that, and for many other reasons, we're very privileged to have lived among them. Thank you. That was my story from my adaptation in Indonesia.
Thank you, Alfredo. I love that story. I also met my spouse during my fellowship, and we share a special bond because of that as well. So thanks so much for sharing. I wonder if Beth, is it okay if we go to your story because I think Jonathan's is not in presenter mode yet. All right. So welcome, Beth Trudell. Beth was an English language fellow in Bangladesh from 2006 to 2008, and she's an English language faculty development specialist. And Beth's story, unexpected outcome, extremely
Sure.
confident
Of course.
students.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. I think Beth might have a little delay.
Hmm.
Sorry, there's a real delay on my speaking, but that's okay. Okay, good. After spending, I do have a delay. Yes, I do. After spending 22 years, 22 years as a trainer. Okay. As a trainer for a wonderful healthcare organization, I thought I needed a change. So And so, as I was 60 years old and a brand new English language teacher when I decided to become an English language fellow. Because of my recent entry into the TESOL field, I was concerned that I might not be able to meet the expectations of the program. I was worried I was worried that my university in Bangladesh would be expecting somebody young and perky. I am nice and I am friendly, but I'm not perky and I'm definitely not young. One day, my department head asked me to observe the foundation program. As you may know, having to attend a foundation program can be a trauma for many students. The purpose of the foundation program is to support students who need help in their English language skills. Many students said that their mother cried all night and their father yelled all night. Their friends were going to university and they were not. After observing the classes and reviewing the curriculum, I took a deep breath and shared my concerns with my department head. The biggest problem seemed to be that the foundation students were not becoming successful university students. She stopped and thought for a moment, and then she asked me if I could design a whole new program. I felt a flash of anxiety, but I took another deep breath and said I could, but I wanted to do it with a team of teachers so that we could all learn and we could all contribute. So the words become a successful university student stayed with me. Rather than focus just on English language skills, we really wondered if we needed to do more. About all of the foundation students were from Bangla medium schools, where the teaching methods were traditional and teacher-centered. The Bangla students really felt they were not as talented as the English medium students. They lacked confidence. In the university classes, the Bangladesh medium students were quiet and let the English medium students do the talking. When I asked them about this privately, they said they were not used to sharing ideas or feelings in their classes. They said the teachers talked and they did not. Because of this, we made the big decision not just to focus on English language skills, but to offer critical thinking and enhancement classes. Instead of making these classes simple and easy, we made them student-centered and challenging. But there were doubters, some doubters who said the Anglo medium students would never adjust to this program. So we were all very nervous on the first day of pre-university classes. We had even changed the name. The doubters' words kept going through my head as I walked into the first critical thinking class. Could we really overcome 12 years of passive learning in one semester? As I walked into that class, I was loaded down with poster paper, crayons, and glitter. The students were surprised to see me. And one student later told me that her thought was, who is this big white woman and what is she going to make us do? However, in 5 minutes, the students adjusted and they were getting involved with creating pictures of what they wanted to do when they graduated from university. The students loved the activities in the classes, but best of all, they were really responding to the teachers' positive feedback and their successes. Every day, they became more and more confident. Just as the teachers were caring and empathetic, so were the students. I love the way they supported each other. There was one student, Fareed, who told me he had trouble learning, but really wanted to be a lawyer so that he could help people who couldn't afford legal support. He stuttered a bit and stumbled over words when he spoke. One day, he was selected as the spokesperson for his small group. He got to the front of the room, and after his first hesitant statement, the students cheered and clapped. He stopped, he looked surprised, and then he smiled. His second statement was filled with energy, and he was making dramatic hand movements. The students again cheered and clapped. This continued until he was done with his presentation. When he sat down, the students patted him on the back and gave him high fives. Fareed and the other students became so confident that at the end of the center, they went to my department head and they told her that they were such good students, they could skip the next semester's classes and go right into the intermediate level. But let me tell you, this is not really done in Bangladesh. Students don't approach department heads with those kinds of requests. She looked at me and she said, "What have you done?" But just like Fareed, I too had become more confident. I told her we all had done something good, something really good. And the data showed that the pre-university students really did become successful university students. And in the program evaluation, the students said the program had brought a new soul to them. Another student said they had moved from hopeless to hopeful students. I have to say, as a new teacher back home, I never, ever would have been able to have this opportunity. And without the fellowship, I would not have been able to go to a new country and a new culture and be part of a wonderful group of teachers who designed a program that affected so many students' lives. In addition, a Bangladeshi colleague and I published an article in the State Department's English Teaching Forum, and we presented our program at a TESOL International Conference. And Fareed, the young man who thought he had trouble learning, he is doing exactly what he wanted to do. He is a lawyer for an NGO, and he helps poor people with their legal problems. He learned that he really could learn. And I learned that I could do a lot more than I ever thought I could do. And if you become a fellow, you can too. Thank you very much.
Yay!
Thanks, Beth, for sharing that story. It's incredible what you were able to do with your students and the bravery it took for you to completely change careers and directions and do something really exciting. So thanks for sharing. Okay, and next up we have Jonathan Maiullo. Jonathan, are you here with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Awesome. All right, welcome, Jonathan. Jonathan was an English language fellow in Paraguay from 2014 to 2016. And currently he's an associate English faculty at the College of Redwoods. Jonathan began teaching English as a volunteer in a refugee development center, which was an experience that prompted him to pursue a master's degree in TESOL. He has taught English as a foreign and second language around the world and heartily believes in the power of storytelling to convey language instruction. He has written about successfully using stories in the classroom both academically and personally. And Jonathan's story is called A Taste of Teachabroad. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Hey, if it's all right with everybody, I'm in very far northern California where the bandwidth is not so good, so I think I might turn off my video because I think it can corrupt my audio. Do I sound okay to everyone right now?
Yes, you actually sound good, Jonathan. It is showing you with possibly a lower internet connection level, though.
Yeah, I came out to my living room, so I'd be right next to the modem too. So I'm just gonna turn off my video, but I'll turn it back on toward the end because I think that could help. So I assure you, I'm telling the story off the top of my head to the best of my ability. I'm not gonna just turn off the video and read. All right. So okay, it's you've got that picture there for a good reference. It's 2014 in Asunción, Paraguay, and I'm making my way to my new volunteer English language class. As I'm getting further and further away from my house, I notice that the streets are becoming more and more narrow, and the floodwaters that are collecting in some places because it's the rainy season are actually beginning to become more than just puddles. They're becoming a few inches of water on the streets here and there. And as the bus sort of rambles down these narrow streets, the waters begin to swell even further until they're muddied street water rivers. And at every intersection, you can see a sort of cross current as another street of water is intersecting with ours, and it starts to become like we're fording a river on this bus. I'm looking out the window and seeing the waters rising to the point where there's probably 2 or 3 feet of muddy water between the wheels of the bus and the street. And I can't help but to look around and notice that there's nowhere to walk. It's like looking out the window, there's nothing but water and buildings, as you can see in that picture there. And I'm starting to think, what am I going to do when I have to get off this bus? And of course, right as soon as I have that thought, the bus driver stops abruptly, cuts the engine, turns around to everybody and says, "Hey, look, you guys are going to have to get off the bus. I can't go any further." And at that moment, I look down at my nice new teacher shoes and my lovely teacher pants and my teacher socks, and all I can think is there must have been some other way. But not seeing any other way or any other possibility, I reluctantly walk up to the door of the bus, look out at the expanse of muddy water, and I jump. And why not? Up until that moment, it had been working pretty well as a strategy for me. Since I'd arrived in Paraguay as an English language fellow, I'd been making some fantastic connections with teachers, meeting some great students, and really feeling like I was making a difference in the work that I was doing. And it was through one of these groups that I'd begun working with that I'd found out about the opportunity to volunteer in the Bañado Sur neighborhood. And the neighborhood had this name because a couple of times a year, it literally became a bañado when the neighborhood flooded, or bath. That's bañado. And the neighborhood had another name, which, if possible, was even less charitable, and this was Capeura. And it had this name because it was built on top of a landfill, and the people who worked in this landfill used capeuras, or hooks in Paraguayan Spanish, to move the garbage around. And so making my way to this class, understandably, I was a bit anxious, not because I was trudging through 2 to 3 feet of muddy water in places, but rather because I felt that my English class was going to have to compete with this world of floodwaters and garbage and uncharitable treatment outside these students' homes. And I think that we know as teachers that oftentimes when you try to make something of your language lesson that it can't necessarily be, it becomes even more difficult and if even impossible to fulfill the need that you've set out for yourself. And this is what happened to me that day, arriving in the classroom and seeing all those expectant faces. I found that somehow I couldn't quite make the connection that I had hoped to make. But I persevered, and like a lot of teachers, I believed that lesson planning was the key to almost any problem I was having. So I went home and I lesson planned every spare moment that I could to try to improve this class that I was doing in the Banyalo neighborhood. I brought in realia, I brought in music, I brought in anything that I could think that would make it even more exciting for these students. And the next week, going back, once again, the bus drove down through those flooded streets, and I found myself jumping into the water again, now wearing shorts, and making my way to this class. And once again, even with all the tricks and interactive activities I had brought to the class, it still didn't seem to go so well. And this, while everything else I was doing in Paraguay as a fellow was going so well. At the time, I was working with the SNPP, or the Community College Association, creating classes. I was working with the Access Micro Scholarship Program. I was working with 3 different universities and a binational center, and it was all going so well. But this one beginner level English class in the Banyalo of 6 or 7 students, depending on the day, was like my Achilles heel. And maybe it would have stayed this way, but for one day after the floodwaters had receded and I found myself going back to the community center in a sort of landscape of dust and hardened mud. And when I arrived there, I found my youngest student, Celeste, with her mother sitting in the courtyard waiting for the class to begin. And Celeste's mother was drinking tereré. And if you're unfamiliar with tereré, let's say it's the national drink of Paraguay. It's yerba mate served cold with one's own blend of medicinal herbs, and it's always shared. And as such, tereré is really less of a drink and more of a way of life. So I knew well enough to accept the offer when Celeste's mom offered to share it with me. And so I'm sitting there in this courtyard in this convivial atmosphere of sun and tereré as my students start to come in. And instead of going up to our class, for once the students sit down at the table in the courtyard with me, and I find that maybe for the first time since I've arrived in Paraguay, that I'm not the teacher, that rather I'm more of a guest in this situation. And so I'm learning about my students start to open up as they start to talk. I learned that Celeste really enjoyed dancing. And one of my really young students, also Isaías, was a fan of the cartoon The Ninja Turtles, which I didn't even know was still on TV. And learning these things about my students made the class so much easier that day. So when I arrived and started teaching, it felt like I had more of a connection with them. And after that, I started going to class early every week so I could have some time to talk with my students. And I started staying later, and I was forging this connection that made this class one of the best things I was doing in Paraguay. And that's saying something because at the time I was working with the Ministry of Education. And so time went by, and the months eventually turned to a year. I got to the 1.5 year mark as I extended my fellowship, and I started thinking that I'd need to find somebody worthy to take over this fantastic class. And looking around, I was a little concerned because a lot of people don't have the spare time that an English language fellow does to devote to a volunteer class that's as far-flung as the Banyalo was and as frequently underwater. And so I set off to find the perfect teacher to take over the class for me, and eventually found Cesar, who worked at the Binational Center, a young and energetic teacher. But I was concerned with everything else that Cesar had going on that he might not be able to take on this class as well. And so to test his commitment, like a true gentleman would, I waited until the rainiest day of the rainy season to bring Cesar down to meet his new class. And as we're on our way down to the Bagnolo neighborhood and the streets are beginning to narrow and once again the floodwaters are starting to rise, I notice that Cesar is looking out the window and seems to be a little concerned about the rising water levels. And I'm wondering if maybe he was indeed the person for the job when he starts asking me questions like, how deep do you think this water is? But fortunately, when we arrive at the neighborhood and the bus stops again a few blocks away from the community center, Cesar seemed to be prepared. He starts rummaging around in his bag, and I think he's maybe looking for like a flare gun or flotation device to get him to the class. But instead, he pulls out a pair of flip flops and quickly changes from his nice teacher's shoes into a pair of flip flops. And without hesitating a second, he jumps off the bus into the water and starts trudging his way up to the community center. And I'm left standing on the bus thinking how incredible it is that even after 2 years, I'm still learning so many things in my experience teaching in Paraguay. And after that, I jump off the bus and I follow the new teacher to his class. And that's my story. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you so much. That's such a sweet and inspiring story, and I think we can all sort of picture one time or another being in a flood zone somewhere abroad. So thanks for that as well. Okay,
My
so
pleasure.
we just have a little extra time. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the program, but I also wanted to address one of the questions that came earlier in the chat about the current status of the program. So the English Language Fellow program is currently on hold due to COVID. We have not sent anyone overseas since March. However, in July, we launched the virtual English Language Fellow program, and right now that is sort of trying to fill the need that fellows would normally fill in the positions overseas. So we have a lot of virtual fellows right now, and we are hoping to resume as soon as we possibly can and feel safe enough to do so. We are recruiting for the academic year 21-22, so we're moving ahead as if we'll be resuming, but again, we won't actually resume until things are safe enough to do so. And I hope that answers your question, but please feel free to ask any other additional questions in the chat. Also, feel free to ask any of our three storytellers any questions. And I'm just going to review the benefits of the program, and we'll have more time for questions and answers. So the English Language Fellow Program offers a $35,000 stipend, and this is for one 10-month fellowship. This stipend is in addition to a living allowance. So you get money that pays for your housing, your local transportation, utilities, and food. So the stipend is on top of all of that. Your international travel is paid for. You get a supplemental health benefit plan. You get an activities allowance that allows you to do all different types of things with your students and teachers in country. And if you have dependents, then there's an additional allowance for that. In order to be eligible to apply to the English Language Fellow Program, you need a graduate degree in TESOL or a related field. And if you don't have a degree in TESOL, but you do have a master's degree, you can still apply if you have a TEFL or CELTA certificate or a K through 12 credential. You need to have experience in teaching, EFL or ESL. With a clearly demonstrated commitment to the field of TESOL. So things that are helpful are being part of, for example, this organization, TESOL or TESOL International, having presentation experience, and also if you do have teacher training experience, that's also a plus, as lots of the projects include a little bit of teacher training. And finally, you do have to be a U.S. citizen to be eligible to participate. So in a normal year, the application opens in September, and the application is open now, so you can apply. We have a priority deadline in December. but the application is rolling, so you can continue to apply after December. However, for best consideration, we encourage you to apply before December. From January through June, we're matching eligible candidates to projects, and then usually the projects begin in August or September. Okay, so please let us know if you have any questions about the program for our storytellers. I'm also going to paste in the chat. We have some additional stories on our website or on YouTube. These are 6 day in the life of a fellow stories where you can actually see what a fellow's life is like in the country of their assignment. So if you want more stories, please check those out. And we encourage you to apply, to check out our website, follow us on social media. And I think Andrew put the link to the newsletter, which you can sign up for. And that is the best way to stay up to date. Whenever we do have changes to the program status, that's how we would send out the message.
You can also check out the EL Programs virtual booth at CATISL. We have one of the Day of the Life videos should be rolling in there. Then if you have any questions, feel free to, you can send me a message through the CATISL platform as well.
Perfect. Well, big round of applause again for our storytellers. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and reminisce about your days as a fellow. So thanks again, and we look forward to hearing from all of you soon and seeing your applications.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to our story. And if you have any questions, I'm always available as well. I love this program, and I can't speak enough.
Yeah, I echo Alfredo's statements there. I'm a big believer in this program, and not only what teachers can learn from doing it, but also for the change that we're able to bring to the communities that we work within. And if you're thinking about doing it, I would very heartily recommend it. It's something the like of which I have never seen anywhere else. And I'm also always available for questions about it too.
Really quick, it looks like there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Still here?
One person says, is it common for fellows to extend their program term?
So I'm also an alum of the program, and I was a fellow for two academic years. So my fellowship was 2014 to 2015 in Kyrgyzstan. And in my case, I was given the opportunity to renew for a second year. This happens, this possibility exists for some projects, but not for all projects. So some fellows may have an opportunity to renew for a second year.
And then, go ahead.
I see Jeffrey's question here. Could the resumption be limited regionally, like some countries are deemed safe, ready to accept ELF, and others are not? And yes, we are looking at this almost daily. We're talking with embassies. We have sort of a reopening checklist that we're working on. So so far nowhere has been stable enough. We think just when they
I did the same. I renewed for a second year in Bangladesh.
Okay, so I think to both Belinda and Jeff's question, it is possible that we will resume when just some countries are ready. We will not necessarily wait until all the countries are ready to resume.
And the second year, I was accustomed to the culture, to the people. I just got so much done that second year. It was great.
I agree with what Beth said. second year was very productive for me as well.
Any other questions? And I had the opportunity to stay for a second year, but I did
I don't know
not.
what is causing this delay.
Sorry, Beth. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming on today. Hope you enjoy the rest of Katiso.
Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, I can stop streaming, and then people won't be able to see the presentation anymore, or they won't be able to join the room anymore.
Yeah, you can go ahead and close it now.
All right.